My relationship of 3 years collapsed for one straightforward reason: I had stopped trying. The next encounter with her came when she appeared draped over some trust fund heir, jabbing her finger toward my face while shouting that I was worthless. I couldn't summon the energy to argue back. Wrestling with fools damages your reputation. But as her fury escalated and her saliva nearly hit my skin, a graceful hand intercepted her path. A composed, crystalline voice sliced through the chaos. "You're welcome to insult him, but your company and your companion's enterprise could vanish by morning." I turned my head and discovered a woman whose beauty seemed almost unnatural, with an aura as frigid as Arctic ice. Who was she? I had absolutely no idea. All I understood was that my troubles had just multiplied exponentially. My name is Marcus Chen, and this represents my second existence. In my original life, I worked myself into an early grave by age 35. My compensation was a wooden coffin and hollow appreciation from corporate masters. This time around, fate smiled differently. I was reborn as the exclusive heir to one of Earth's wealthiest dynasties. And finally, I comprehended it. What's the purpose of relentless hustle and grinding ambition? Life passes too quickly. Time to embrace tranquility. So I transferred control of our multi-trillion-dollar family conglomerate to my team of obsessive executives. My current daily agenda contains exactly 3 components: maintaining fitness, consuming quality food, and savoring existence. Today I wore simple charcoal athletic wear while wandering through the city's most exclusive shopping complex. I wasn't hunting for luxury items. A new gourmet market had launched, specializing in premium ingredients, and I wanted to purchase some wild Pacific chanterelles for crafting infused mushroom essence. Just as I was selecting the finest specimens, a piercing, recognizable voice cut through the atmosphere behind me. "Well, look who we have here. If it isn't Marcus Chen." I didn't even pivot. I could identify that voice anywhere. Miranda Porter, my former girlfriend. 3 months earlier, she delivered a tearful separation speech about how she couldn't envision a future with me. How a mature man lacking ambition and genuine employment was nothing but a failure. I hadn't bothered defending myself then. She was correct in her assessment. I was a failure sitting atop a trillion-dollar fortune whose most significant daily dilemma was deciding what to eat for lunch. We were traveling different paths, so I accepted the breakup without resistance. I simply hadn't anticipated running into her here. "Miranda, this is the loser ex-boyfriend you mentioned," another masculine voice chimed in, saturated with undisguised contempt. I exhaled and slowly rotated. Miranda was clinging to a guy with slick back hair and an extremely punchable expression. The counterfeit Richard Mille watch on his wrist sparkled under the store lighting. My executives, in one of their attempts to curry favor, had given me an authentic one. It was currently accumulating dust in storage. When Miranda spotted me, a disturbing pleasure illuminated her eyes. She elevated her chin like a preening peacock. "That's correct, Blake. This is him, Marcus. Let me introduce you. This is my boyfriend, Blake Sullivan. He's the sole heir to Sullivan Enterprises." She really emphasized the words "sole heir." The guy, Blake, examined me from head to toe. His gaze lingered on my slightly worn tracksuit before he released a sneer. "Rough times, huh, buddy? Still wearing merchandise from the discount rack. I suppose that's what happens to guys with zero drive. Miranda, you must have really suffered with this guy." Miranda immediately adopted a pained, nearly tearful expression and leaned into Blake's chest. "It's all behind me, Blake. Thank heaven I found you. Now I understand what a quality existence truly means." As she spoke, she flashed the Cartier bracelet on her wrist. Another counterfeit. I nearly laughed. It was a gathering of cheap imitations. Several other customers had already paused to observe the spectacle, pointing and murmuring. "Look at that guy dressed so shabbily, getting humiliated by his ex in public. Absolutely pathetic. Pathetic. He didn't work hard. He deserves getting dumped." Her new boyfriend appears like a genuine catch, though. "Look at all those designer brands." I cleaned out my ear with my pinky finger. Arguing with these individuals was a waste of oxygen. All I desired was to purchase my mushrooms and return home. "Are you finished?" I asked flatly. "If so, please move. You're blocking the morels." My reaction was clearly not what they'd anticipated. Miranda's face transformed from smug to the shade of a ripe tomato. She probably expected I'd become angry or perhaps shrink away in embarrassment. I didn't either. My composure was the ultimate insult. "Marcus, what is that supposed to mean?" she shrieked. "Look at you, you pathetic slob. You can't even afford decent clothing. What gives you the right to speak to me like that?" Blake stepped forward, looming over me. "Don't you recognize when you're out of your league, kid? Do you have any concept who I am? I can make one phone call and you'll never find employment in this city again." "Oh," I said, selecting another morel and giving it a sniff. Nice and earthy. Fresh. My complete indifference finally ignited their fuse. Blake reached out to shove my shoulder. "Are you deaf, you?" I frowned. I don't appreciate being touched. Just then, a voice as cool and crisp as mountain wind cut in from the side. "Stop." It wasn't loud, but it carried an authority impossible to ignore. Blake's hand froze mid-motion. All of us simultaneously turned toward the sound. A woman was walking deliberately toward us. She wore a flawlessly tailored ivory pantsuit, her long hair secured in an immaculate bun that revealed a smooth forehead and an elegant swan-like neck. Her features were perfect, like a sculptural masterpiece, but her eyes were coated in a layer of frost that seemed ancient. It made you hesitant to look directly at her. The moment she materialized, the ambient chatter of the store died. Every eye was drawn to her as if she were the center of gravity itself. An absolute ice queen, I thought to myself. The woman halted in front of us. Her gaze swept over Blake and Miranda the way you might observe a pair of buzzing insects. Then her eyes settled on me. For a split second, I thought I detected her pause, her brow furrowing almost imperceptibly. Miss Sterling," Blake stammered, seeing who it was. All the arrogance drained from his face, replaced by a fawning, terrified expression. "What are you doing here, Miss Sterling?" I processed the name through my head. For a small-time heir like Blake to be this terrified, there was only one Sterling of any consequence in this city. Victoria Sterling, the CEO of Zenith Corporation, a legend in the business world, famous for her ruthless methods and stunning beauty. They said that if she ever smiled, the entire market would tremble. Of course, nobody had actually witnessed her smile. Victoria ignored Blake's groveling. She glanced at his hand, still hovering near my shoulder, and her voice dropped another 10 degrees. "What were you about to do?" "And nothing," Blake stammered, yanking his hand back like he'd been scorched. "Miss Sterling, you misunderstand. I was just joking around with my friend here." Miranda was petrified. She didn't know Victoria, but she could determine from Blake's reaction that this was someone you absolutely did not provoke. She clutched his arm, not daring to utter a word. Victoria's gaze shifted to Miranda. "A moment ago," she said evenly, "you called him worthless." Miranda flinched, her face turning chalky white. Victoria looked back at Blake. "And you said you could drive him out of this city with a single phone call." Beads of cold perspiration appeared on Blake's forehead. He bowed his head, babbling. No, Miss Sterling. I was just talking nonsense. Sullivan Enterprises," Victoria stated, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. "Primary business, low-end property development. Last year's financial report showed a net deficit of $30 million. Current bank debt, $120 million. Your capital chain is about to collapse. Last week, your vice president attempted to secure a meeting with me 3 times. He was rejected 3 times. Every word was like a hammer strike, hitting Blake directly in the chest. His face was now completely drained of blood. "With what exactly were you planning to drive someone out of town? Your nearly bankrupt company, or that counterfeit watch on your wrist that's worth at most $300? I couldn't help it. I snickered. This woman was intriguing, and she possessed a vicious tongue. My laugh sounded unnaturally loud in the dead silence. Victoria's gaze fell on me again, and that icy look seemed to hold a flicker of curiosity. As for Blake and Miranda, awful didn't even begin to describe the expressions on their faces. They looked like they'd been stripped naked and thrown into a public square for everyone to judge. The whispers resumed, but this time the tune had changed. "So he's a fake rich kid, And so arrogant too. That girl's blind, dumped a decent guy for that piece of work. Who is that woman in the ivory suit? That presence is incredible. What a boss. Blake felt like he was suffocating. He'd lost more face today than in his entire life combined. He shot me a venomous glare as if this were all my fault. Then, grabbing the nearly catatonic Miranda, he scrambled away, disappearing into the crowd. And just like that, the farce concluded. I watched them depart, shaking my head. Why even bother? Thanks, I said, turning to Victoria. I didn't care about their insults, but she'd saved me some time. Victoria studied me. Those cold eyes examining me from head to toe, and her brow furrowed again. You can stand there and do nothing while someone calls you worthless to your face. Her voice held a note of confusion and disappointment. What else was I supposed to do? I countered. Get into a barking match with a dog. You don't become a dog. You just get fleas. To navigate this world, peaceful indifference is the greatest virtue. If you worry about every little thing, your mind becomes a prison with no peace. My twisted logic seemed to throw her for a loop. She was silent for a moment before speaking again, her tone clipped. A man should have some fight in him. With that, she turned and walked away. The click of her heels on the marble floor sounded like a cold, rhythmic beat. I watched her go, rubbing my chin. Fight. I used all that up in my last life. This time around, I just want to be a quiet, comfortable failure. I looked down and went back to selecting my mushrooms. But just then, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed, Grandpa. My stomach dropped. The old man was usually off the grid, sailing his yacht or something. Why was he calling me out of the blue? I answered, but before I could say a word, his voice, full of vigor, roared through the phone. You little punk, get yourself home now. Half an hour later, I was standing in the study of the Chen family estate in Greenwich. My grandfather sat in a massive leather wingback chair, polishing a vintage gold pocket watch, his face as dark as thunder. Grandpa, you called me back in such a hurry. What's going on? I said, trying to sound cheerful as I approached. He didn't even look up, just snorted. Where were you today? Nowhere special. Just went to the mall, did some grocery shopping. Grocery shopping? He slammed the watch down on his mahogany desk with a dull thud. You went grocery shopping and had the Sterling girl bail you out of a fight. I froze. The Sterling girl. Victoria. How did he know? How did I know? He sputtered, his mustache twitching with rage. Old man Sterling just called me. Said his granddaughter played the hero at the mall today, saved some loser who was being publicly humiliated. And then he asked me who the loser was, because he looked a hell of a lot like you. I was speechless. The city was way too small. You little brat. You've dragged the Chin family name through the mud. He was getting more worked up by the second. You have all the money and resources in the world, and you let a woman fight your battles for you. And you let them call you worthless to your face. Grandpa, they just don't know who they're dealing with, I muttered. You dare talk back to me? He shot up from his chair. I see what the problem is. You're too idle. You've got mold growing on you from doing nothing. That's it. I can't let you go on like this. A terrible feeling washed over me. Grandpa, what are you planning to do? What am I planning? He paced the room with his hands behind his back, finally stopping in front of me. He spoke each word with deliberate force. Your Grandpa Sterling and I have already discussed it. Tomorrow you're going with the Sterling girl to get married. You're going to what? I jumped back as if I'd been electrocuted. Get married? To who? Victoria Sterling. Who else? Who else would have you, you damn slacker? The room started to spin. Victoria Sterling and I had a childhood betrothal. It was something my grandpa and her grandpa had cooked up one night over a bottle of ridiculously expensive whiskey. I always thought it was a joke. I never imagined they were serious. Grandpa, this is the 21st century. Who has arranged marriages anymore? I'm not doing it. Besides, Victoria Sterling is a big deal. Why would she ever be interested in me? Whether she's interested or not, she's marrying you, he said, his tone final. This was a promise between our generation. Besides, Old Man Sterling thinks his granddaughter is too cold, like a robot. He thinks a laid-back punk like you might balance her out. We both think you two are a match made in heaven. A match made in hell is more like it. An iceberg and a slacker. That's not complimentary. That's a natural disaster. I don't care. I'm not getting married, I said, sticking my chin out. It's not up to you, he roared. If you don't show up tomorrow, I'm cutting off all your credit cards and freezing all your assets. You can go beg on the street for all I care. I deflated. He wasn't bluffing. He'd done it before. My perfect, carefree life was about to come to an end. Meanwhile, at the Sterling residence, Victoria had just finished a transatlantic video conference. She was rubbing her temples and reaching for her coffee when the butler knocked. Miss Sterling, your grandfather would like to see you in the study. She frowned but rose and went. In the study, her grandfather was examining an old painting with a magnifying glass. Grandpa, you wanted to see me. Ah, Victoria, you're back. He put down the magnifying glass and smiled at his favorite granddaughter. Was everything all right at the mall today? Just a minor incident, she said dismissively. So I heard, he chuckled. You handled it well. A true Sterling. You have a strong sense of justice. Victoria didn't respond. That young man you met today, her grandfather said, changing the subject. What did you think of him? An image of Marcus's lazy face and his ridiculous, barking with dogs, philosophy flashed through her mind. A lazy sack of bones, she said coolly. Utterly without ambition. A lost cause. Ha ha. Her grandfather laughed instead of getting angry. A rather accurate assessment. Well, tomorrow I want you to go and marry that lost cause. The expression on Victoria's face froze solid. Grandpa, are you joking? Do I look like I'm joking? He dropped his smile, his face turning serious. The marriage pact between you and the Chin boy was made the day you were born. It's time to honor it. I refuse, Victoria shot back without a second thought. I will not marry a loser. You'll find out if he's a loser or not after you marry him, won't you? Her grandfather said, his tone heavy with meaning. Victoria, you're brilliant in every way, but you're wound too tight, like a string that's about to snap. I want someone in your life who can help you relax, help you live like a 20-something woman instead of a 24/7 work machine. I don't need anyone telling me how to live my life, she said, her voice hard. This isn't negotiable, her grandfather replied, his own tone hardening. You will marry the Chin boy. If you don't show up tomorrow, you can forget about being the CEO of Zenith Corporation. Victoria flinched as if she'd been struck. She stared at her grandfather in disbelief. She knew what she had sacrificed, what she had given up to earn that position. And now he was using it to threaten her, all to force her to marry that good-for-nothing man she'd met today. Her heart sank like a stone. The study fell into a dead, suffocating silence. The next day, outside City Hall, a black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the curb. I got out, yawning. Beside me, Victoria emerged, dressed in a white skirt suit, her face an icy mask. We had both been escorted here by bodyguards sent by our grandfathers. We hadn't said a single word to each other since we got in the car. The pressure inside was low enough to freeze water. I didn't really care. I can coast anywhere. But Victoria was clearly furious, her beautiful face set like stone. Let's go, I said lazily, heading for the entrance. She followed behind me in cold silence. The whole process was unbelievably fast. Fill out a form, take a picture, get a stamp. In less than 10 minutes, 2 brand new crimson marriage certificates were in our hands. When it was time for the photo, the photographer looked at the 3-foot gap between us with a pained expression. Could you two please move a little closer? Look a little more intimate. Victoria didn't budge, her face impassive. I sighed. The poor woman was just trying to do her job. I stepped closer and put an arm around her shoulder, trying to pull her in. Her body was stiff and cold to the touch. Every muscle screamed resistance. A faint cool fragrance, like winter jasmine, drifted from her. It was nice. Don't touch me, she hissed through clenched teeth. Just play along, I whispered back. The sooner we finish, the sooner this is over. Click. The photographer, seeing her chance, snapped the picture. In the photo, my smile is completely fake, and her expression is one of pure annoyance. We look less like newlyweds and more like a couple finalizing their divorce. Walking out of City Hall, I tossed the offensively red certificate in my hand. It didn't feel real. I was married. Marcus, Victoria said suddenly, her voice colder than the morning air. Yeah. I want you to remember the nature of our relationship, she said, her eyes sharp as daggers. We are husband and wife in name only. I expect you to harbor no delusions. Oh, I nodded. Good. Same here. Therefore, I've had an agreement drawn up. She pulled a file from her purse and handed it to me. After today, we will not interfere in each other's lives. You can continue to live your idle existence, but I have 3 conditions. I took it and glanced over the document. First, you will not cause trouble outside using my name as your shield. Second, you will play the part of a loving husband in front of our families. Third, you will not enter my bedroom without my permission. After 1 year, we will file for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. As compensation, I will give you a sum of money sufficient to live comfortably for the rest of your life. I looked at the agreement and felt a laugh bubbling up. A sum of money. She probably had no idea that the entire market cap of her precious Zenith Corporation was less than 1/10 of the walking around money in my personal account. Still, the terms were perfect. Non-interference. Fantastic. No problem, I said, and signed my name with a flourish. Victoria seemed surprised by how quickly I agreed. She paused for a second before taking the document back. Good. She nodded, then turned back toward the Rolls-Royce. Get in. We're going home. To our house. She put a special biting emphasis on the word our. I shrugged and followed. The car drove to an exclusive gated community built into the side of a mountain, finally stopping in front of a sprawling estate that was more of a compound than a house. Our grandfathers prepared this as our marital home, Victoria said coldly. From now on, this is where we live. I stared at the mansion, which was even bigger than my family's estate, and felt a sense of dread. A place this big must be a nightmare to keep clean. Inside, the decor was minimalist modern chic, all black, white, and gray. It was cold and impersonal, which suited Victoria's style perfectly. A middle-aged man in a butler's uniform greeted us. Mr. Chen, Miss Sterling. I am the household manager. You can call me Davis. Davis, Victoria said, show him to his room. Of course. Davis nodded respectfully, then gestured to me. Mr. Chen, if you please, your room is the first on the left on the 2nd floor. I nodded and followed him upstairs. Victoria immediately went into a study off the main hall, clearly ready to get back to work. A true workaholic. My room was huge, with its own walk-in closet, a bathroom the size of my old apartment, and a massive balcony overlooking the forested hills behind the house. The view was nice. Mr. Chen, your luggage has been placed in the closet. Please let me know if you require anything at all, Davis said. Will do. Thanks. After Davis left, I flopped down on the king-size bed, which looked like it cost more than a car. Yeah, comfortable. Maybe this married life of coasting wouldn't be so bad. At least I got a free mansion out of the deal. Just as I was basking in my good fortune, my stomach rumbled. With all the morning's excitement, I hadn't eaten. I hopped off the bed and went to find the kitchen. As I reached the top of the stairs, I smelled something burning. I frowned and followed the scent. The open-plan kitchen was filled with thick black smoke. Victoria was frantically trying to smother a scorched pan with a lid. Inside the pan was some kind of unrecognizable black substance. Her expensive white suit was now decorated with several black smudges, and a smoke alarm was screaming bloody murder. I just stared. This titan of industry, this ice queen of the boardroom, couldn't even boil water. I sprinted over, grabbed the lid from her, shut off the gas stove, cranked the exhaust fan to high, and threw open all the windows. The movement was fluid and practiced. The piercing shriek of the alarm finally stopped. Victoria stood frozen, a smudge of soot on her cheek. Combined with her shell-shocked expression, it gave her icy face the first hint of humanity I'd seen all day. She actually looked kind of cute. "You," she started, looking at me. "Are you trying to burn the house down?" I snapped, pointing at the ruined pan. "What were you even making?" "Frozen pasta," she mumbled, her voice low. She was clearly embarrassed. I peeked in the pan. Jesus. The pasta had been turned into charcoal. "You put the pasta in before the water was even boiling, didn't you?" A faint pink blush appeared on her cheeks. "I forgot," she said defensively. I sighed. A complete disaster of basic life skills. If I relied on her for food, I'd probably starve to death first. "Move," I said, nudging her aside. "I'll do it." Victoria watched with skeptical eyes as I expertly pulled ingredients from the massive Sub-Zero fridge. I ignored her, selecting a few of the best morels I'd bought that morning and a thick-cut slab of A5 Wagyu. Washing, chopping, heating the pan, adding butter, I didn't move fast, but every action was calm and efficient, almost beautiful to watch. Soon, an incredible aroma filled the kitchen. The rich, decadent smell of butter-seared steak and earthy mushrooms. Victoria swallowed unconsciously. I plated the steak, drizzling it with a red wine and black truffle reduction sauce I whipped up. On the side, I arranged the sautéed mushrooms and a few cherry tomatoes. For the final touch, I was about to open a bottle of Romanée-Conti I saw in the wine fridge, but then I remembered reading that she didn't like wine. Instead, I went to my luggage and pulled out a small crock of my own homemade plum wine. I poured 2 glasses. The amber liquid swirled in the crystal, releasing a sweet, fruity scent. "Dinner's ready," I called out to the still-dazed Victoria, placing the plates on the dining table. She walked over mechanically and sat down, staring at the plate in front of her, which looked like the main course at a 3-Michelin-star restaurant. She was once again struck dumb. You can cook." "What? You want to wait for me to starve?" I picked up my knife and fork and cut into the steak. "Perfect, medium rare, tender, juicy." She hesitantly copied me, cutting off a small piece and putting it in her mouth. The next second, her eyes went wide. It was a flavor explosion unlike anything she had ever experienced. The savory richness of the beef, the deep umami of the mushrooms, the complex notes of the sauce, they danced on her palate in a symphony of taste. Her chewing slowed as if she wanted to make the moment last forever. "So?" I asked, already knowing the answer. She didn't reply. She just started eating faster. It was a feeding frenzy. I'd never seen the Ice Queen so flustered. After finishing the entire steak, she finally put down her utensils, looking completely satisfied. She picked up the glass of plum wine and took a small sip. The sweet and tart flavor cut through the richness of the meal perfectly. A contented blush rose on her cheeks. "You." She looked at me, her expression complicated. "I thought you were idle." In her mind, an idle loser couldn't possibly possess such masterful culinary skills. This level of cooking required at least a decade of dedicated practice. "Even when you're coasting, you should coast with quality," I said, swirling the wine in my glass. "Eating is one of life's great pleasures. You can't compromise on that." Victoria was silent. She looked at me, truly studying me for the first time. This man, who is now her husband in name, he wasn't what she thought he was. Not at all. After dinner, I automatically started clearing the dishes. Victoria stood by, watching me wash up, looking a little lost. This kind of domestic, cozy scene was something completely foreign to her, something she'd never experienced in her 20-plus years of life. She hesitated. "Thank you." "Don't mention it," I said without turning around. "If you really want to thank me, stay out of the kitchen from now on. I have a strong will to live." Victoria was speechless. The ice mask snapped back into place, and she turned and stalked upstairs. I watched her go and smiled. Teasing her was actually pretty fun. Later that night, after a workout and a shower, I came out of my room in a pair of loose gym shorts, heading downstairs for a glass of water. As I passed Victoria's bedroom, I noticed her door was slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling out. It was almost midnight. Was she still working? This woman was going to work herself to death. I shook my head and was about to continue downstairs when her door creaked open a little wider. A small head peeked out. It was Victoria. She clearly wasn't expecting anyone to be in the hall. The moment our eyes met, she froze. Then her gaze involuntarily drifted down from my face to my bare chest. The moisture from my shower hadn't completely dried, tracing paths down the lines of my abs before disappearing below the waistband of my shorts. A six-pack, V-lines, the works. I had them all. Victoria's breath hitched. Her face turned red, a blush that started at her cheeks and spread all the way to the tips of her ears. Slam. The door was violently shut. I rubbed my nose and glanced down at my own body. Being this attractive really is a burden. Humming a little tune, I went downstairs, feeling quite pleased with myself. Inside her room, Victoria leaned against the door, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she thought it would leap out of her throat. She pressed her hands to her burning cheeks. The image from the hallway was seared into her mind. That man. Why does he have to be in such good shape? The next morning when I came downstairs, Victoria was already at the dining table. She was dressed in a sharp business suit, her makeup subtle and elegant. She was back to being the untouchable Ice Queen CEO, except when she saw me, her gaze darted away, and the tips of her ears were a telltale pink. Looked like last night made an impression. I pulled out a chair as Davis the butler served breakfast. Oatmeal and fresh bagels with lox, my favorite. Grandpa must have given him a heads up. Victoria cleared her throat, trying to break the awkward silence. I have to go to the office today to handle a few things. I might be back late tonight. You can. She was about to say, figure out dinner for yourself, but then she remembered my cooking, and the words died on her lips. Got it, I said, taking a bite of bagel. Breakfast ended in a strange silence. Victoria practically fled, grabbing her briefcase and rushing out the door. I was happy for the peace and quiet. After eating, I did some Tai Chi in the back garden, then settled into my study to read a rare book on ancient brewing techniques I'd recently acquired. Life was good. Meanwhile, on the top floor of the Zenith Corporation tower in the CEO's office, Victoria was staring at a report, but the words weren't registering. Her mind kept replaying images of Marcus's lazy smile and his ridiculously fit body. Miss Sterling. Miss Sterling. Her assistant had to call her name several times before she snapped out of it. What is it? It's about the Hudson Valley Wellness Retreat Project proposal. The department heads are at each other's throats. What are your instructions? The Hudson Valley Project was Zenith's most important investment of the year, but it was already hitting roadblocks in the planning stage. All the proposals were bland and uninspired, variations on the same tired theme. None of them would ever get past the board. Victoria rubbed her temples, a headache brewing. She reviewed the proposals again but couldn't find a single spark of originality. She spent the entire day locked in her office, finally dragging her exhausted body home late that night. The mansion was quiet, with only a single dim floor lamp lit in the living room. On the dining table, something was covered by a food dome. She walked over and lifted it. It was a bowl of lobster bisque, still warm, with a side of perfectly toasted croutons. She froze. Marcus made this. She picked up the spoon and took a bite. The bisque was rich and velvety, the flavor of the lobster infused into every drop. A single warm bowl seemed to chase away the entire day's fatigue. Her heart softened just a little. This man, he might be lazy, but he wasn't entirely useless. Holding the empty bowl, she found herself walking upstairs, stopping outside Marcus's room. The door was ajar. She hesitated for a moment, then quietly pushed it open a crack. Marcus was sitting at a large desk, engrossed in a leather-bound book. He was shirtless again, wearing only a pair of loose pajama pants. His back was to her, showing the smooth, powerful lines of his shoulders and arms. There was a different kind of charm to a man when he was focused. Victoria found herself staring, mesmerized. Just then, as if sensing her presence, Marcus suddenly turned his head. "Spying on me?" he asked, an eyebrow raised, a playful smirk on his lips. Victoria's face instantly went crimson. She felt like a kid caught with her hand in the cookie jar and turned to flee. "Wait," he called out. She froze, her back still to him. Footsteps. He was walking toward her. He stopped right in front of her. "Did you eat the bisque?" he asked, his voice low and clean, like he'd just showered. "Yes," she mumbled, staring at the floor. "Something wrong?" he asked again. Victoria's head snapped up, her eyes filled with a guarded look. "What do you mean? You've been frowning all day." "You might as well have. I'm stressed, tattooed on your forehead," he said, leaning against the door frame, looking at her with amusement. "Tell me about it. Maybe I can help." Her disbelief was plain. "You can't help me with this." It was a problem that dozens of her top executives couldn't solve. What could a slacker possibly do? "It's that Hudson Valley Wellness Retreat project, right?" Marcus said, hitting the nail on the head. Victoria's eyes widened. "How did you know?" "You had a stack of files a foot high on your desk." The title was in a pretty big font. "Hard to miss," he said, gesturing toward her study. Victoria was speechless. "Your whole approach is wrong," Marcus said casually. "You don't build a wellness retreat by just throwing up a few rustic-looking buildings and a couple of farm-to-table restaurants. You have to build a culture, an IP. An IP. She frowned. She knew the term, of course, but how did it apply here? That land in the Hudson Valley, didn't it used to have a local name? Healer's Ridge or something? Legend says some old medicine men used to forage for herbs there, Marcus asked. There's a local legend, but it's just folklore. It has no commercial value. Who says? Marcus smiled. Legends are the best IP. You build the entire resort around the story of this healer. Create a massive botanical garden filled with medicinal herbs where guests can learn to forage and make their own tinctures. Build a 5-star restaurant with a menu based on seasonal wellness recipes. Partner with top medical schools to host exclusive health and wellness symposiums. But most importantly, you tell the story. Turn the legend of the healer into a web series, an animated short, a mobile game. Make the IP come alive. Once everyone knows the story, they won't just be visiting a resort in the Hudson Valley. They'll be making a pilgrimage. Marcus spoke with an easy confidence, and his eyes held a light Victoria had never seen before. It wasn't the look of a loser. It was the sharp, insightful gaze of a master strategist who saw the whole board. Victoria was completely stunned. His idea shattered her team's entire framework and opened up a completely new way of thinking. Heritage Wellness IP. Every point he made was perfectly aligned with current market trends. The concept was brilliant. She stared at the men in front of her, feeling like she was seeing him for the first time. Who is he? How do you know all this? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Oh, I got bored once and read a few books on the subject, Marcus said as if it were nothing. But for Victoria, his words were a tidal wave. Read a few books, and that's all it took to come up with a business concept this revolutionary. This man was definitely not as simple as he appeared. I need to go organize my thoughts, she stammered, feeling like her brain was short-circuiting. She needed to be alone. She practically ran back to her room. Marcus watched her hurried retreat, the smile on his face deepening. The iceberg, it seemed, was starting to melt. Over the next few days, Victoria was like a different person. She stopped coming home late and was always there for dinner that I cooked, of course. While we ate, she would casually ask me for my opinion on various work-related issues. I was happy to oblige, offering a suggestion here and there. After all, advising the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation was a fun little diversion for my life of leisure. With my help, the Hudson Valley project moved forward at an unprecedented pace, earning unanimous praise from the board. The way Victoria looked at me began to change day by day. The initial contempt and suspicion had transformed into admiration. Yes, that was it. Admiration. A few times I caught her secretly watching me while I was cooking or reading, her eyes sparkling like a little girl who had just discovered a hidden treasure. This evening was Zenith Corporation's annual anniversary gala. As her husband in name, I was expected to attend. I went to my closet and grabbed a random Armani suit. It couldn't be helped. My sycophantic employees had never gifted me an outfit that cost less than 6 figures. When I came downstairs, Victoria, who was waiting in the living room, stopped and stared. She was wearing a stunning backless black evening gown, the picture of elegance and seduction. And me in a perfectly tailored black suit that made me look tall and distinguished. Standing together, we looked surprisingly good. "Shall we?" I asked, offering her my arm. Victoria blushed, but after a moment's hesitation, she placed her hand on my arm. Her skin was cool and soft. The gala was being held in the grand ballroom of a 5-star hotel. The room was buzzing with the city's elite, a sea of champagne flutes and designer clothes. The moment Victoria entered, she became the center of attention, and by extension, so did I. "Who's that man with Miss Sterling? I've never seen him before." "I don't know, but he's handsome, though. He looks a little lazy. Probably her new arm candy for the night." I paid the chatter no mind, grabbing a glass of champagne and finding a quiet sofa in the corner. Victoria was immediately swarmed by a crowd of business associates. I was enjoying the peace when an unwelcome guest sat down across from me, a drink in his hand. "Marcus, is that really you?" I looked up and had to laugh. Of all people, Blake Sullivan and Miranda Porter. They were like a bad penny. After Victoria had publicly humiliated them at the mall, Blake's family company went completely belly up. I was surprised they still had the nerve to show their faces at an event like this. Miranda's eyes darted from my expensive suit to Victoria holding court across the room, her expression a toxic mix of jealousy and bitterness. "So you actually managed to land Miss Sterling," she said, her voice dripping with acid. "I'll give you credit, Marcus. You've gotten much better at being a leech." Blake snickered. "What's the deal? She put you on the payroll. Did she bring you out tonight to show you what the real world looks like?" I took a sip of my champagne, not bothering to reply. Talking to them was beneath me. My silence, however, was taken as confirmation. Miranda got bolder, raising her voice to make sure the people around us could hear. "Everyone, come and see. This is the boy toy that Victoria Sterling keeps. A loser who has nothing but a pretty face." Her shrill voice cut through the ballroom's polite hum, and dozens of heads turned our way, their expressions a mixture of disgust and morbid curiosity. Victoria heard the commotion, frowning. She excused herself from her circle and started walking briskly toward us. Seeing Victoria approach only made Miranda more triumphant. She was going to expose me as a fraud right in front of her, to make the great Victoria Sterling taste the same humiliation. "Miss Sterling, you need to open your eyes. The man you're with is a complete and utter loser. When he was with me, he didn't have a job, didn't have any ambition, and did nothing but mooch off me all day. He's fooling you with that face. He's nothing but a gold-digging parasite." Miranda was practically spitting as she delivered her righteous tirade. The murmurs around us grew louder. People started looking at Victoria with pity, as if she were some foolish woman blinded by a handsome face. Through it all, I remained on the sofa, calmly sipping my champagne. I was actually curious to see how my ice queen wife would handle this. Victoria walked right up to me, not even sparing Miranda a glance. First, she gently straightened my tie. Then, in front of everyone, she leaned down and softly kissed me on the cheek. The entire ballroom fell silent. Everyone stared, stunned. Miranda's tirade died in her throat, her face a kaleidoscope of shock and confusion. Only then did Victoria straighten up, turning to face Miranda, her eyes like chips of ice. "Are you finished?" Miranda flinched. "First," Victoria said, holding up a single elegant finger, her voice quiet but carrying across the silent room, "he is not my date, nor is he my boy toy. He is my husband, Marcus Chen. We are legally married." Boom. The crowd erupted. The business world's untouchable queen, Victoria Sterling, was married. This was a bombshell big enough to rock the city's entire financial sector. The color drained from Miranda's face. Husband. Marcus, that loser, was Victoria Sterling's husband. It was impossible. Second, Victoria continued, her voice growing colder, "You say he has no job and no ambition. Let me educate you. My husband is the sole heir to the Chen family fortune. His personal assets exceed the combined market capitalization of every company in this room. The reason he doesn't work is simple, he doesn't need to. He owns more wealth than you could spend in 10 lifetimes." The room exploded into gasps and frantic whispers. Blake's face had turned the color of ash. The Qin family. The legendary Qin dynasty that controlled trillions in assets. That Marcus Chen. Third, Victoria said, her gaze now fixed on Blake, you and your pathetic excuse for a company. Sullivan Enterprises filed for bankruptcy protection last week. Your assets have been frozen, and your creditors are circling like vultures. Yet here you are, wearing a counterfeit watch and pretending to be someone you're not. The only parasite in this room is you. Blake stumbled backward as if he'd been physically struck. Miranda clung to his arm, her entire body trembling. Victoria turned back to me, her expression softening. She extended her hand. Shall we dance, darling? I smiled, setting down my champagne glass and taking her hand. We shall. As we walked onto the dance floor, the crowd parted like the Red Sea. Every eye was on us, but all I could see was Victoria. The music started, a slow, elegant waltz. I placed my hand on her waist, and she rested hers on my shoulder. We began to move, perfectly in sync. You didn't have to do that, I murmured. Yes, I did, she replied, her eyes meeting mine. You're my husband. Nobody insults you in front of me. Husband in name only, remember. I reminded her, a teasing note in my voice. A faint blush colored her cheeks. Well, perhaps I'm reconsidering the terms of our agreement. I raised an eyebrow. Oh. Before she could respond, the dance ended. Applause erupted around us, but Victoria didn't let go of my hand. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Business associates approached to offer congratulations, trying to curry favor with the newly revealed Qin heir. I handled it all with practiced ease, Victoria by my side. When we finally returned home, it was past midnight. Victoria kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief. Thank you, she said quietly, for tonight. I didn't do anything, I replied. You were the one who fought the battle. You gave me the courage to fight it, she said, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. The air between us felt charged, heavy with unspoken words. Victoria, I started. Good night, Marcus, she said quickly, then turned and disappeared up the stairs. I watched her go, a smile playing at my lips. The iceberg was definitely melting. Over the following weeks, our lives settled into a comfortable rhythm. I cooked, she worked, and we spent our evenings talking about everything and nothing. The Hudson Valley Project launched to massive success, becoming the talk of the industry. Victoria's star rose even higher, but she always credited me as her secret advisor. And slowly, imperceptibly, the walls between us began to crumble. One evening, I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when Victoria came home early. She walked in and, without a word, wrapped her arms around me from behind. I froze, spatula in hand. Victoria. Just, let me stay like this for a moment, she whispered, her voice tired. I set down the spatula and turned to face her. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her perfect composure finally cracked. What happened? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. She laughed, but it sounded hollow. I've spent my entire life proving myself, fighting to be taken seriously, sacrificing everything for the company. And today I realized. I'm exhausted, Marcus. I'm so tired of being strong all the time. My heart clenched. I pulled her into a proper embrace, and she buried her face in my chest. Then don't be, I said softly. Not with me. You don't have to be the Ice Queen here. You can just be Victoria. She pulled back slightly, looking up at me with those beautiful, vulnerable eyes. Who even is Victoria anymore? I've forgotten. Then let's find out together, I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. And then, as naturally as breathing, I leaned down and kissed her. For a moment, she was still. Then she kissed me back, her hands fisting in my shirt, pouring all her loneliness and longing into that single point of contact. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless. Marcus, she whispered, I think I'm falling in love with you. I smiled, my forehead resting against hers. Took you long enough. I've been in love with you since you burned that pasta. She laughed, a real, genuine laugh that lit up her entire face. That's a terrible reason to fall in love with someone. Maybe, I agreed. But it's my reason. That night, the agreement we'd signed outside City Hall became nothing more than a forgotten piece of paper. Victoria didn't sleep in her room. She slept in mine, curled against my chest, finally at peace. And I, Marcus Chen, the man who'd vowed to coast through his second life doing nothing, discovered something worth fighting for after all. Love. 3 months later, Victoria stood at the altar of the Chen family chapel, wearing a wedding dress that made her look like a dream. This time, there were no grandfathers forcing us, no contracts or conditions. Just two people who'd found each other in the most unexpected way. Do you, Marcus Chen, take Victoria Sterling to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do, I said, grinning like an idiot. And do you, Victoria Sterling, take Marcus Chen to be your lawfully wedded husband? She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. I do. You may kiss the bride. I pulled her close and kissed her, and the chapel erupted in cheers. Our grandfathers sat in the front row, looking insufferably smug. Told you they were perfect for each other, Grandpa Sterling said. Best idea we ever had, Grandpa Chen agreed. And for once, I had to admit, they were absolutely right.